When Earth first reached the stars, the people were nervous but hopeful. For many years, humans had dreamed of meeting other worlds, yet no one knew how the galaxy would welcome them. Some feared that other species might look down on humanity. Others wondered if Earth would be ignored. But the truth turned out to be different. The first meetings were with the Orcs, a calm people who lived in wide oceans on their home planet. Their bodies were gentle and light, with soft scales that shone in the water. The Orcs spoke slowly and chose their words with care. They had known of other spacefaring species before, but they often stayed away from councils and politics. They trusted little outside their waters. Yet, when they met humans, something shifted. The Orcs noticed that humans listened. Even when they did not understand fully, they tried. That small act of respect felt rare in the galaxy. Soon after came the Tari. They were tall and slim, with bright skin that carried a glow like starlight. The Tari spoke in songs. Their voices rose and fell like music, and their words carried emotions as much as meaning. Many species found their speech hard to follow, but humans made an effort. Musicians and teachers from Earth learned to answer the songs with simple notes. The Tari were surprised and also pleased that humans wanted to share rather than change them. These small gestures built something powerful. At first, it was only friendship, a trade of goods here, a meeting of minds there. But slowly it grew into something more. On the Great Council Station, where ships from a dozen worlds gathered, Earth began to earn a name. People whispered that humans were not the strongest or the richest, but they were different in another way. They kept their word. The first true pact came during a council gathering. The Orcs sat in a deep pool chamber. The Tari sang from their crystal platforms, and humans stood in between them, grounding the space with their simple voices. One Orc leader asked, "What promise will Earth give to those who are not of Earth?" The human speaker was not a warrior or ruler. He was a teacher named Tomas. He stood quietly for a moment, then said, "We cannot promise to know everything. We cannot promise to never make mistakes. But we can promise this. If we call you friend, then you will never stand alone." The Orcs blinked their wide eyes. The Tari let out a soft song. Even other species, who had come only to listen, leaned forward. In that moment, Earth's promise was heard across the chamber. It was not a promise of strength. It was a promise of loyalty. In the weeks that followed, the pact grew. Humans traveled to Oran seas and shared diving suits so they could walk under the waves. Oran swam alongside them, showing cities of coral and light that few outsiders had ever seen. On the Tari homeworld, human visitors listened to song archives that told stories thousands of years old. Some even added new verses, carefully crafted, to show their respect. The Tari welcomed this with bright smiles, saying that Earth had given their songs new life. These exchanges built trust, and trust built unity. Soon, humans were invited into councils that had once been closed. They did not take the lead, but they were welcome to speak. And when they spoke, others listened. It was not long before whispers spread through the galaxy. Some leaders asked why humans were trusted so quickly. Some said it was because humans had no long history of betrayal in the stars. Others said it was because humans did not try to stand above anyone. They stood beside them. Whatever the reason, more and more voices turned toward Earth. For the first time, smaller species who had felt ignored now had hope. They saw how the Orcs and the Tari worked with Earth and thought perhaps they too might find friends. The galaxy was wide, and fear often kept worlds apart. But humans seemed to carry a bridge in their hands. On the station, late one evening, Tomas walked with Myra, another human who had helped with the songs of the Tari. Myra said softly, "Do you think we can truly keep such a promise? To never let anyone stand alone?" Tomas looked out the window, where stars spread like silver dust across the dark. He thought for a long moment before answering. We may not always win. We may not always know what to do. But we can always choose to stay. That is within our power. Myra smiled, and her heart felt lighter. She knew then that Earth's promise was not about victory. It was about presence. It was about refusing to turn away when others needed a hand out in the days ahead. The galaxy would test this promise. Dark whispers were already moving between the stars, though few yet knew it. But on that quiet night, with the pack still fresh, there was only a sense of hope. A sense that Earth had stepped into the galaxy not as conquerors, not as wanderers, but as friends who carried a simple vow. And for the Orcs, for the Tari, and for many others who had long felt alone, that vow was worth more than any fleet of ships or hoard of treasure. It was something new, something rare, something that just might change the galaxy forever. The galaxy seemed calm on the surface, yet beneath that calm were voices of worry. Traders moved between worlds, carrying goods, songs, and news. Some of the news was bright, like the pact between Earth and its allies. But other words were carried in whispers, never spoken too loudly. They spoke of fleets moving in the far spiral arm, fleets that did not come for trade or friendship. The Orcs were the first to bring this rumor to the council. One of their travelers had returned from a long journey with eyes wide and voice low. He said ships had vanished along quiet routes. The lights of colonies that once shone bright now burned no more. No answers were found, only silence. The Orcs did not know who was behind it, but they knew the pattern of fear. The Tari also felt the echo of danger. Their singers kept vast archives of sound, storing not only music but signals from the stars. Among the waves of static and rhythm, they began to hear strange tones. These tones were not natural. They were messages, coded and sharp, carrying warnings of power gathering in hidden places. The Tari shared this with the humans, their voices heavy with unease. When Earth heard these things, they did not look away. Where some species turned inward at the sound of danger, humans leaned forward. Their question was not how do we hide, but how do we prepare? A meeting was called on the council station. The great chamber filled with shapes and colors of many worlds. The Orcs glistened in their pools. The Tari sang softly from their crystal balconies. Humans stood together, calm but watchful. An elder from the Orcs spoke first. His voice was slow, his words careful. We hear shadows move in the outer paths. Our ships return less often. We fear something watches us. A Tari singer followed, her song carrying a gentle sadness. The tones of the stars are changing. What we hear is not nature. It is not chance. Something waits beyond our sight. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Many eyes turned to the humans. They were still newcomers to the galaxy, yet already others looked to them for guidance. A base human engineer named Leanne finally spoke. Her voice was steady. On Earth, we learned that fear grows faster than truth. But fear can also be a guide. If danger is near, then we must face it together. If it is only rumor, then unity will still keep us strong. Some leaders of other species shifted uneasily. They were not ready to face an unknown threat. One voice from the back said, "If danger rises, perhaps we should bow before it. Better to survive than to risk all." But the humans shook their heads. Mira, the teacher who had spoken before, answered gently, "Survival without freedom is not living. To hide or bow only gives more power to the one who frightens us. We do not yet know this threat, but we know this truth. Together we are safer than alone." The Orcs listened, their eyes soft with thought. The Tari gave a low song of agreement. Even those who still doubted could not deny that Earth's words carried strength. In the days that followed, humans began to prepare quietly. They did not build great weapons or shout of war. Instead, they worked with their friends. They taught. The Orans new ways to track stars beyond their seas. They showed the Tari how to shape signals that could warn of intruders faster than before. They offered simple skills, but those skills grew into shared defense. The Orams, who had once been slow to trust, began sending their young to train with humans. They learned how to read maps and build tools that could sense far across space. The Tari, who had long sung only of beauty and memory, began to weave notes of alertness into their songs. Humans joined them, their plain voices adding to the music. Together, they built a new language of warning that could carry across the stars. On the council station, the mood began to shift. Where once there had been nervous silence, now there was quiet planning. Leaders spoke more of what could be done and less of what could not. The presence of humans seemed to draw out courage that had been hidden for years. One evening, Rian the miner stood with a group of Orans beside the wide viewing windows of the station. The stars glittered in the distance. Rian said softly, "Fear spreads faster than ships if we let it. But courage spreads faster still when one voice begins." The Orans looked at him with deep eyes, and for the first time they smiled in their quiet way. They understood that the danger was still unseen. The fleets in the spiral arm had not yet shown their full face, but the galaxy was no longer waiting in silence. Whispers of fear had been met with whispers of hope, and hope, when shared, was stronger than any shadow. Earth had planted something small yet powerful among its allies. It was not a weapon, not a secret plan, but a way of thinking, a way of standing. Even as the unknown threat crept closer, the stars seemed a little brighter, because humanity had given others the courage to look up instead of down. The whispers continued to travel across the galaxy, carried on trade ships and in quiet songs. Yet now, when the words reached alien ears, they were not met with only dread. They were met with a thought that had never been there before. Perhaps the shadows could be faced. Perhaps the stars could be safe. And perhaps, with Earth by their side, no world would have to stand alone again. The warnings that once felt distant soon grew harder to ignore. One by one, small events began to cast long shadows across the galaxy. A caravan ship that carried grain from one system to another did not arrive. At first, traders thought it was only a broken drive or a wrong jump. But when search vessels went looking, they found nothing. Not even wreckage remained, only silence. Then a small colony on the edge of the spiral arm went quiet. The colony had been lively, filled with lights and voices, but now no signals reached the stars. Neighbors tried to call, but the calls were never answered. Soon after, a second colony fell silent. The council station grew tense. Each new report brought more doubt, more fear. Some whispered that the shadow fleets were real. Others said the colonies may have chosen to leave or that the trade ships had turned rogue. Yet deep down, everyone felt the truth. Something was moving closer. When the council gathered again, the chamber was heavy with unease. Leaders spoke in low voices, their eyes avoiding one another. The Orans floated quietly in their pool, their scales dull in the dim light. The Tari sang only soft notes, unsure of what else to say. For a while, no one wanted to speak. Then, a human stepped forward. It was Rian, the miner who had once reminded others that fear spreads faster than ships. His clothes were simple, his hands rough, but his voice carried across the chamber. "Silence is the friend of fear," he said. "If we do not speak, if we do not act, then fear will decide for us." Many turned to look at him. He was not a leader, not even a trained diplomat, yet his words struck like clear bells. Rian continued, "We cannot stop the shadows from coming closer, but we can stop ourselves from giving them power before they even arrive." Some nodded slowly. Others frowned, still unsure. One council member from a distant world raised a hand. What if we cannot resist them? What if they are greater than us all? Rian did not answer with promises of victory. Instead, he said, if we are divided, then we are already lost. But if we stand together, then we will give them something they do not expect: unity. The Orans stirred, their tails swishing gently. The Tari let out a low song of thought. Even the quietest voices in the chamber began to hum with new energy. That night, humans did not waste time. They began to share what knowledge they had. Engineers from Earth brought simple scanners that could be built quickly, showing allies how to place them on their ships. These scanners were not as strong as the devices of great powers, but they were easy to build, and they worked. Soon, the Orans had them installed on their ocean fleets, and the Tari fitted them onto their crystal stations. Humans also began to teach. They did not teach only weapons or defense, but also calmness in crisis. On the Oran seas, Rian and his friends stood, with young Orans guiding them on how to work together even when afraid. They showed them drills, not of attack, but of formation, so that no ship would be left behind. On the Tari homeworld, Myra worked with singers to create signals of warning that could travel faster than normal words. These signals were placed in songs that could be shared between fleets. With a single note, whole systems could be alerted. Slowly, the mood shifted. Where fear had once ruled, now there was preparation. Where there had been silence, now there was learning. The threat had not yet shown itself, yet already Earth was turning shadows into reason for unity. But not everyone agreed. Some still whispered that it would be wiser to surrender if the dark fleets truly came. They will take what they want, one voice said, and nothing we do will change that. To this, Myra gave an answer during one quiet meeting. She said, perhaps they will come with power greater than ours. But power is not the same as strength. Strength is the will to stand. And that will is something no fleet can take from us unless we give it away. Her words were repeated by others. Soon the Tari carried them in song. The Oran spoke them softly. In their waters, even small worlds that had long felt ignored repeated them to one another. The spirit of Earth was spreading. Still, the shadows did not stop. More whispers came of new colonies falling silent. A trade route once busy was now empty. The galaxy knew that the danger was no longer far away. It was near. On the council station, humans looked out at the stars. Their faces were steady, their hearts firm. They did not know the shape of the enemy. They did not know how strong the fleets would be. But they knew this much. When the time came, they would not let their friends face it alone. The shadows were drawing near. Yet for the first time, the galaxy did not feel only fear. It felt ready. Ready not because of weapons or numbers, but because of something more powerful. Because of the promise of Earth. And in that promise, the stars held a quiet light of hope, shining even against the growing dark. The galaxy was filled with species older and wiser than Earth. Many of them had ships that could cross light years in moments. Some carried energy brighter than suns, and others had built cities that floated in the sky like jewels. Compared to them, humanity was still young. Its fleets were smaller, its weapons less advanced, its maps still incomplete. And yet, in the growing days of fear, something about humans seemed to shine in a way no tool or machine could. It began on the Oran seas. When the humans arrived to help train, the Orans expected to see grand devices or hidden weapons. Instead, they saw people standing in the water with them, holding only simple tools and patient smiles. Rian, the miner, explained to the young Orans, "We are not here to give you machines you cannot build. We are here to stand with you, to practice with you, to show that fear can be faced together." The Orans at first were unsure. They had never trained side by side with outsiders, but soon they noticed something unusual. Humans did not give up. When a wave knocked them over, they stood again. When a drill failed, they laughed and began once more. That steady spirit began to stir something deep in the Orans. They realized it was not the strength of the body that mattered most, but the strength of the heart. On the Tari homeworld, the gift appeared in another way. The Tari were masters of song, their voices able to fill great halls with beauty. But they often sang apart from each other, each voice shining alone. When the humans joined them, the songs changed. Humans could not match the skill or range of the Tari, yet they sang with a warmth that invited others in. Slowly, the Tari began to weave their notes together, creating harmonies that were stronger than single voices. Mira explained to them, "One voice is lovely, but many voices together carry farther." On Earth, we learned that a chorus can hold more power than even the finest solo. The Tari listened, and for the first time, their archives filled with songs that were built not on one singer, but on many. These songs carried not only beauty, but also unity. They became living signals that spread through fleets and stations, reminding everyone that they were part of something larger. The council members began to see the pattern. Humans did not bring the greatest ships or brightest weapons. What they brought was a way of drawing others closer. Where fear pushed species apart, humans pulled them together. It was a gift that seemed simple, but it was rare in a galaxy where pride and caution often kept worlds apart. Even small species who had never been noticed before began to find courage in the presence of humans. A tiny group of merchants, known as the Fari, spoke during one council session for the first time in generations. They said, "We never believed our voices mattered, but the humans taught us that even the smallest light can help guide the way." The chamber grew quiet then, filled with nods and agreement. Humanity's gift was spreading beyond its closest allies. On the station, Tomas walked with Myra one evening, watching the stars. Myra said softly, "It feels strange. We have fewer ships, weaker engines, yet the others are beginning to look at us as if we are strong." Tomas smiled. Strength is not always in the hand. Sometimes it is in the choice to reach out. That is what they see. Back on Earth, messages arrived from the council. Families and teachers listened with wonder as they heard of friendships forming across the stars. Children in schools drew pictures of Orans swimming with humans or Tari singing with them under crystal skies. The dream of unity was no longer only words in a council chamber. It was alive. Still, the shadows had not gone. More reports arrived of silence on the edges of the spiral arm. The threat was moving, even if still unseen. Yet this time, the galaxy did not fall into quiet fear. Training continued, songs of warning were prepared, and stations worked together in ways they never had before. One night during a gathering, the Tari sang a new piece created with human voices. The song began soft, a single tone that might have been lost in the air. Then another voice joined, and another, until the hall was filled with rising harmony. Even those who could not sing joined with claps, hums, or simple sounds. The Orans, the Tari, the humans, even the quiet Fari added their part. The song lifted like a wave, filling every corner of the chamber. It was not a song of fear. It was a song of promise. When it ended, no one spoke for a long time. At last, an Oran elder said, "Perhaps this is the gift of Earth, not machines, not maps, but a way of showing that many hearts can beat as one." From that day, even the most doubtful voices in the council began to change. They understood that the galaxy did not need to wait for Earth's weapons or numbers. The unusual gift was already here. It was the gift of unity, born from the human spirit, spreading through every world willing to listen. And in the dark places where silence still grew, This gift became a light that could not easily be dimmed. The days of waiting finally ended when the shadow showed its hand. It did not begin with a great fleet or a terrible strike. Instead, it came quietly, like a wave testing the shore. A cluster of strange drones appeared near the trade routes. They were small metal shells with sharp wings and empty faces, yet they moved with purpose. They scanned ships, circled colonies, and sent signals back to the dark. For a time, no one dared to touch them. But when they began to disrupt trade, the council had no choice but to act. The chamber filled again. Leaders spoke quickly, some with panic in their voices. If these are only scouts, what will the real fleets be like? One asked. Another whispered, if we strike them, perhaps we will call down the storm faster. The room turned restless until a calm human voice broke through. It was Myra. She said, the storm is already coming. These drones are not here to be left alone. They are here to see if we are weak. We must show that we are not. The Orans looked to one another. The Tari sang low notes of agreement. Even those who were doubtful could not argue with Myra's clear words. The council agreed to act, but when the fleets gathered, the doubt returned. The drones moved quickly, swarming across the edge of the system. The Orans had never faced such a foe. Their ships trembled, unsure of how to move together. The Tari sang warnings, but the voices overlapped, turning to confusion. In that moment, it seemed as if unity might fall apart before the first true test had even begun. Then the humans stepped forward. Rian called across the channels, his voice steady and strong. Stay close. Do not move alone. Trust the one beside you. His words were simple, yet they carried weight. The Orans followed. The Tari adjusted their songs to match. The humans formed a line, not ahead, not behind, but beside their allies. The drones rushed forward, their movements sharp and quick. But where they expected to find scattered ships, they found formations. When they tried to break through, the fleets shifted together, blocking the way. The Tari sang clear signals now, guiding ships from one side to the other. The Orans moved in steady groups, their ocean-born instincts guiding their teamwork. And at the center of it all, humans encouraged, calmed, and reminded each ally of their strength. The battle was not one of fire and destruction. It was a test of order against chaos. The drones tried to create panic, but the unity of the fleets held them back. Slowly, piece by piece, the drones were pushed away from the trade routes. When the last one fled into the dark, a great silence fell across the fleets. Then, slowly, voices rose. The Orans spoke of pride in their young who had stood firm. The Tari sang a rising song of triumph. Even the small Fari clapped their hands and cheered. For the first time, the council felt the warmth of victory. It was not a victory of strength alone. It was a victory of unity. On the station, when the news arrived, Mira stood before the gathered crowd and said, "This was only a small test, but it shows us what the shadows will learn. They will see not scattered voices, but one voice. Not broken lines, but one line. Together, we can face more than we ever thought possible." Her words spread far and wide. Across distant colonies and quiet stations, beings repeated them to one another. Some who had doubted before now began to believe. The victory was small, yet its meaning was great. It showed that the promise of Earth was not only words. It was real. It could be lived, even against the edge of fear. That night, on the Oran seas, the young swam in wide circles, their scales bright with joy. On the Tari homeworld, singers created a new harmony, weaving Myra's words into their notes. On Earth, families listened to messages from the council and felt pride that their children's voices were being carried across the stars. But while the fleet celebrated, Tomas spoke quietly to Rian and Myra. He said, "The shadows will not stop with Drones. This was only the beginning. Myra nodded. Yes, but beginnings matter. If we had failed today, fear would have won. Instead, we have shown the galaxy that hope is stronger. Rian looked out at the stars. His rough hands clenched, not in anger, but in determination. Let them come then. We will be ready, not because we are strongest, but because we are together. The three stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars glitter. Beyond that glitter, the dark fleets waited. They would come with greater strength, with sharper tools, with a will to break the unity that had just been formed. But now the galaxy was different. It was no longer a collection of worlds standing apart. It was a growing circle of friends, tied together by trust and by the simple, unusual gift of Earth. The first test had been passed. The true trials were yet to come. The victory against the drones had given hope, yet the galaxy knew that shadows were still moving beyond the light. Reports came from distant systems. Fleets missing, stations silent, strange signals flickering across sensors. Each message carried a warning, but also an opportunity. The council called another meeting. Species of all kinds gathered in the Grand Hall, floating cities and orbiting stations appearing through communications channels. Even the smallest voices were invited. Humans were at the center, not because of size or firepower, but because of what they had shown. Myra stepped forward first. Her voice was calm but strong. We have seen what fear does when left unchecked. We have also seen what unity can do. But words alone will not carry us. We need a voice that reaches beyond. Our fleets, a voice that shows even the farthest world that we are together. An elder Oran nodded. You speak of a signal, not a weapon. Something that tells others to stand, even if they are alone. Yes, Myra replied. We must make our presence known in a way that cannot be ignored. Not with fire or force, but with hope and courage. We must show the shadows that we are more than fear. We are voice, we are heart, we are one. Plans began immediately. Ships would not only patrol, but also carry signals of light, sound, and message. The Tari sang songs that could be transmitted across light years. The Orans trained their fleets. Informations that were visible from space, patterns that could be read as messages. Humans helped coordinate all of it, teaching simplicity and clarity. It was not easy. The Shadow had agents that tried to confuse communications. Strange storms, disrupted signals, and some ships reported seeing nothing but silence in deep space. Doubts arose. Some species whispered, perhaps the humans are too young. Perhaps we cannot hope to reach beyond the dark. Rian stood beside Mira, raising his voice. Do you think the darkness waits for the perfect moment? Do you think it will stop us because we are unsure? Our voice matters because it is ours. It may be small, but it can grow. It can gather strength across every world willing to join. That day, fleets across this spiral arm prepared for the first great signal. Ships flew in patterns that formed clear symbols. Oran scouts traced the paths across the sky, making bright lines that shimmered with energy. Tari voices broadcast messages of courage and warning, mixed with the songs of humans who had learned their rhythms. From Earth, people watched on screens as messages of unity traveled through space. Children waved at the ships, imagining themselves among them. Teachers explained how a voice could be stronger than any weapon. Families felt pride in the human spirit, proud that their world had taught courage in this way. The first transmission reached a distant system where silence had reigned for years. A small colony of merchants had almost given up hope, believing they were alone. When the symbols appeared, glowing in the sky, and the songs reached their ears, they wept with relief. For the first time in decades, they saw the galaxy as alive and full of friends. Their small ships rose from the planet to join the larger fleets, bringing with them food, tools, and knowledge. They carried messages of their own worlds, connecting to the larger circle. The shadows noticed too. Their scouts reported interference and unity, a signal that grew stronger with each passing hour. They attempted to disrupt it, but the growing voice of the galaxy could not be silenced. The fleets moved together, the songs rose higher, and humans continued to coordinate, guiding species who had never worked together before. Even the smallest Fari added their chirps and whistles to the transmission. Their simple voices became part of the chorus. Mira smiled, watching the layers of sound and light spread farther than anyone had expected. In the council chamber, an elder Tari said, "This is more than a test. It is proof that unity can reach places fear cannot touch. We are hearing each other across worlds, across space, across danger." Rian added, "It is not perfection that matters. It is participation. Every voice adds strength. Every heart that chooses courage becomes part of the signal. This is humanity's gift, to remind everyone that even the smallest voice matters when joined with others." By the end of the transmission, distant systems once isolated felt alive again. Stations that had been abandoned for years reported renewed activity. Ships began to move together where they had drifted alone. Even the shadow could sense it, a wave of courage and hope that challenged their plan. The first test of humanity's voice had been a success. But Mira knew it was only the beginning. The shadows would not remain idle. The galaxy's voice must continue to grow, stronger with every world that joined. That night on Earth, humans looked up at the stars. The sky seemed brighter, filled with ships, lights, and voices. They understood that their gift was more than courage. It was a way to unite, to inspire, to call every species to stand together against whatever darkness might come. And across the galaxy, hearts listened, and the message of hope carried on wind and song, through space and time, growing louder and stronger, reaching where no weapon could. The shadows had watched and waited. They had tested, observed, and calculated. Now, they came with full strength, a dark fleet that stretched beyond the horizon of distant stars. Silence fell across the galaxy as ships of every kind prepared. For the moment they had feared and hoped for. Mira stood on the bridge of the human command ship, looking at the countless lights of allies gathered for the final stand. Rian was beside her, his hands resting on the railing, his eyes steady. Thomas adjusted the control panels, ready to coordinate the fleets. "This is it," Myra said. "Everything we have done leads to this. Every song, every message, every act of courage. We are not just fighting for survival. We are showing the galaxy what we can do when we stand together." Across the fleets, Arans, Tari, Fari, and humans took their positions. Ships moved in perfect patterns, reflecting the unity that had grown from the first test of drones. The Tari sang a powerful harmony that traveled through light and sound, a message of strength and defiance that reached every corner of the galaxy. The Shadow Fleet advanced. Its ships were large, dark, and silent. They carried no music, no light, no warmth. They relied on fear, calculation, and surprise. But when they came into view, they were met with a sight they had not expected. The fleets of the galaxy were not scattered or weak. They moved as one, bright and coordinated, sending signals of defiance. Rian took a deep breath. "Remember, it is not our weapons alone. It is our courage and our unity. We are the voice that will not be silenced." The first clash was sudden. Shadow ships attempted to break through the outer line, aiming for isolated worlds and small stations. But the fleets adjusted instantly. Aran ships swirled like water, blocking every path. Tari singers directed movements with their songs. Humans guided coordination, sending simple but clear instructions that every species could follow. Drones from the shadows tried to interfere, but they could not match the growing strength of the united voices. Every act of aggression met a response of cooperation. Every attempt at fear met calm and courage. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Shadow ships found themselves unable to isolate any fleet. When they tried to break a line, it shifted and adapted. When they attempted to hide, the lights and signals of the galaxy revealed their positions. Mira saw the change clearly. They are learning what we have always known, she said. Strength is not only in size or power. Strength is in standing together. Rian nodded, and in hope. Hope is our greatest weapon. The battle continued, not with endless explosions, but with precision and coordination. Ships moved like living organisms, responding to each signal. Tari voices wove patterns through space, guiding actions. Orans reacted with instinctive speed. Humans coordinated calmly, making decisions that allowed every ally to act with confidence. After hours, the Shadow fleet faltered. Its ships, once confident and bold, now hesitated. They could not understand the unity they faced. The messages of courage, the lights and songs, and the countless hearts standing together made them retreat. Slowly, they pulled back into the darkness from which they had come. When the last shadow ship disappeared, silence fell. Then cheers rose from every corner of the galaxy. Ships spun, lights flashed, and voices sang. Even the smallest Fari danced in delight. The victory was not just survival. It was a proof of what the galaxy could achieve when hope and unity guided them. Mira looked at Rian and Tomas. We did not just defend ourselves. We showed the galaxy that courage can grow from even the smallest beginnings. That hope can reach the darkest places. That no shadow is too strong when hearts are united. Rian smiled. The shadows will return someday. They always do. But now they know they are not facing scattered worlds. They are facing a voice that will not break. Across the galaxy, planets celebrated. Humans on Earth looked to the stars with pride. Orans swam in their oceans, singing songs of victory. Tari voices echoed across their cities. Small colonies once afraid of isolation now sent messages to join the growing network of unity. The council gathered once more, this time with no fear in their hearts. Mira spoke to all species. Today, we have learned something powerful. It is not weapons that define strength. It is trust, courage, and unity. Each of us is part of something larger than ourselves. That is what makes us strong. That is what makes humanity a friend to all. And so, the galaxy changed. The shadow had tested them, but humanity and its allies had answered. They had shown that fear could be met with courage, that darkness could be met with light, and that even the smallest voice could grow into a song that reached across the stars. In the quiet after the battle, Myra looked out at the shining fleets and whispered, "This is only the beginning." But now, the galaxy knows what we can do when we stand together. The stars shimmered, carrying the promise of hope, courage, and unity to every world. The final stand had been won. The galaxy had learned that the hearts of its people, joined together, could face any threat.